All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Breadcrumbs Project. And do we have a show for you today? Um, boy, oh boy. Uh, yeah. So this is in support of my book here. Let's see. Yes. So this is what all of this is based on. Um, this book that I wrote, Latin America. Where did it get that name from? Because it doesn't have anything to do with Latin Spanish. Because I can tell you, as a fluent Spanish speaker, Latin and Spanish have very, very little to do with each other. And so that has started a quest, and uh, and hence a lot of data, a lot of information is out there that helped me see that Latin America is called Latin America because it was settled and is was populated by the Latin population that was uh, uh, defined by Rome, and that is for later consumption. But the Latin Empire was all of Europe, and and then there was another empire, the Tartarian Empire, that covered Russia and China. So there is a big story that we don't know much about in what has happened, but I have been working on this pretty steadily, and I think I've pulled together the whole story. So let's take a look. This is Wikipedia. The best information we can pull out there uh, tells a story different than what we are taught in school. Number one, we have a Roman Empire based out of Rome and spreading across the Levant, taking in Palestine, Jerusalem, and Egypt and Carthage. But then you have a whole other Latin speaking empire called the Gallic Empire. Before the Roman Empire and the Gallic Empire was the Latin League. History tries to tell us that it was four villages around what is present day Italy, and that is impossible because archaeology and architecture tell a whole different story by and far, especially with the maps that we have that are in Latin, and they are in detailed and spread Latin cities throughout Europe and then Latin America. So when there was a division from the Latin League, there were these two empires. One was the Roman Empire, and then there was the advanced Latin-speaking empire called the Gallic Empire. And this is where architectural archaeology comes into play, absolutely and decisively comes into play. But you have to be honest about what your eyes are seeing, not what a broken history has told you. So I live in Spain, in Galicia, in the Gaelic Empire, which was seated in a town called Coruna, or now A Coruña, and they made a big, huge move to run away from the debaucherous and um, collapsed Roman Empire. So it's an interesting story on how this all unfolds. But basically, this is what we have, and uh, and I wish I could give credit for where I got this from. Hopefully, the person sees it, lets me know, and I'll re-edit this video. But this actually no, I apologize. This is rendered from from ChatGPT, from the information that is out there in several maps that exist of the Gallic Empire and the Roman Empire, and one of them was a map that I found that has a strong resemblance to this. So if this looks familiar to you, please contact me because I would like to give you credit, but the story has to be told. And here it is: the Gallic Empire, what is present day Spain, France, a bit of Germany, and Great Britain, not including Ireland. Ireland stayed independent for so much and so long. Okay, so this tells you the strength of the Celtic Empire. So they skedaddled off and went to Mexico. As I pull up that map, they went to Mexico, and there's just absolutely no doubt about what happened here. One of the biggest tells is a city called Compostela, which is present day Santiago de Compostela, which is an ancient Latin city. You can just tell by the cathedral, which is an ancient Latin basilica, ginormous, beautiful, architecturally stunning, but it's a Latin basilica. It's not Romanesque, and there's no way it could have been built by the Spaniards at all. Why? Because after the collapse of the Roman Empire, which there was no collapse, they just went away. Okay, but the 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 engineering, the ability to build, the money, the resources, all that is the genius of the buildings that we see um, all over Europe, and including Tartaria, which is in the maps without a doubt. And in the maps you see Latin, and in this map that you're going to see right now is Latin. But Santiago de Compostela is absolutely and utterly key to this because back before it got that um, the name of Saint James, which is Santiago, it was Compostela in Latin. You know, and I have the maps to prove that as well. You can go back and look in the video archive that I have here for that. I won't waste your time on it, but I will show you this map that is very famous and very well established, even in the Library of Congress and several famous collections. But here is that city, Compostela, Compostela, because it has the two L's, which it also had when it was Latin in Iberia. And Compostela is here in Galicia, Galicia. And let me zoom it in for you guys so you can just see what I'm talking about. Zoom in a lot more. Galicia, Galicia, and that's where I live currently in Spain, in the Galician province, and I'm half Basque and have been coming to northern Spain all of my life in the Basque region. So I understand these people. I know these people. These are my people, Galicia. Okay, and here's the problem. This is Nova Hispania. This is a large map that comes out of a large atlas that came from an old collection, and there's several of this atlas book out there, several copies of this atlas out there in different collections. All right, so it's not just this map is in different collections; it's the whole atlas is in different collections, and this is called Nova Hispania, which is in the pink, et Nova Galicia. So, understanding what this means and the importance of it. This is Latin. People assume that it's Spanish. It's not. Nuevo España would be correct for uh, when the Americas were discovered. It was España with a little N with a line over it. Okay, it wasn't Hispania. Hispania is a Latin version or the original version of Spain, of the Iberian Peninsula, that was later made into Spanish. So originally it was called España, Hispania, and was turned to España. Okay? And then et is and in Latin. Nova Galicia, again, Latin, nova, that means new. Okay? In Spanish, nova means doesn't go. Va is to go, no is no, nova. All right, so this is not Spanish in the least bit. And it is beautifully done, highly detailed, highly detailed. So this was not a waste of money. And we can also tell you today that many of these cities, lakes, and ports are still there, including the very famous city of Guadalajara. And Compostela with one L is where it should be. And then Chapilicum Mare, which you can't get more Latin than that. And that lake is still there as well. But there are all these other cities. Oh, yeah, here's the Nova Galicia, okay? And there are a ton of other smaller cities, but these cities' names are in Nadualu, Naluatu, Naluata, which is the native language of the people of Mexico and would come on to be the Aztec language. So we have native language. The town name, the smaller town names are native language. The larger cities with walls, towers, and everything. If I zoom in on Compostela, you can see that through the red. You have towers, you have walls, and then you have all these other city names that are in the local dialect, Nova Galicia, and then here, Argentini et Ares Fondene. Again, can't get more Latin than that, and it's talking about these being silver mines. What is so important about this? First of all, it's Latin, and in a um, Spanish environment of the 1400s, 1492, 1500s, when when Christopher Columbus detected the Antilles. Okay, 1492, he just detected, didn't establish it, didn't make colonies, but detected the outer Antilles of the Caribbean Sea. Like he didn't land in Cuba, he didn't land in Mexico. Where he landed was the outer Antilles, and he detected the New World. The New World had already been there. Okay, 1492, Columbus. This map would have been useless to Columbus, and the Spanish would have never rendered this in these two languages because they're Spanish, and they were going to establish Spanish cities, and this would be Nueva España, and for whatever reason, Nueva Galicia. Galicia wasn't important in the times of um, of of Columbus. If anything, it'd be New Portugal, Nueva Portugal, Portugalete, because Portugalto, because that's where Columbus was coming from. The only way this map makes sense is going back to this situation in the 260, 274 AD when the breakaway happened, when the Gallic Empire put a militaristic wall between the Roman Empire at both ends, okay? And they went black. And this is the when the Roman Empire did not know what was going on. And what was going on was these guys were escaping the Roman Empire and establishing a land that they had long discovered and had long been pulling silver and ore out of and establishing cities quietly on the west side of Mexico, on the Pacific side of Mexico, on the land where there shouldn't be anything at this point, because it was a slow crawl going from the Antilles, sailing back to the New World, telling everybody about everything, getting a fleet, getting back across, and starting that process of going back and forth. And this land is established, and we have three pointers that still exist today. This map says that it's from 1665. Impossible. Impossible. 1665 Latin was a long dead language. And the Nahuatl, the native language, was long dead as well, and wouldn't have been available to the cartographers. No, this is a um, a brass plate because the Romans, the Phoenicians, were fully, and the Greeks were fully capable of doing brass plates to replicate maps and books. So they had books just like this one, made of vellum that would withstand time. So, yes, this is where the um, where the Gaelic Empire scooted off to, and then they went ahead and uh, conquered the whole of Latin America, from the north to the tip of the south. So there's a big story that has been covered up, and this is how it happened. So whenever the this empire fell, well, there was division throughout Rome, and if we look to, I hope it's this one. Nope. That's actually very interesting because it is my town here in Spain, and they they we are in a, how do I say, a an area that is on the coast and was inhabited by the Romans. And if you see this building, which still exists, and I pass just about it every day during the summer, which is down here, those are Latin Roman columns. So where is it? What I'm looking for? I had everything all ready, man. Aha, here it is. It's a YouTube video. Excuse me while I grab a sip. So, yes, this is the situation in the Latin Empire, not the Roman Empire, the Latin Empire. Okay, in the Latin Empire in 306. So this is 25 years after the collapse of the Gallic Empire, where Rome kind of, they say, united with the Latin Empire, and that is kind of the situation, but not at all, because each area, each region had um, their own uh, rulers, whether it was a Caesar, whether it was Augustus. That was those were just names and words. Basically, all of these areas had their own emperors. But if you see the big golden one to the next to me here, this is still the Gaelic Empire. So what's happened is the elite, the Senate, the the important people, the consuls, the real emperors, all those that, yeah, the elite basically scooted off to Western Mexico, and the rest of the empire had to kind of fend for itself. And that's what Constantine did. He basically served as a firewall to the Americas, and then the Americas were sending a ton of silver and gold to Constantine so that he could conquer the Roman Empire, thereby spreading the firewall from the Americas by controlling Rome through his imperial seat in Turkey, in Istanbul, Turkey, which was Constantinople, a very key place. Why? Because this is where the East meets the West. Okay? This is all up here, Russia, and this is still Europe. This is where basically Asia begins. So the power of Constantinople and the distribution of power and gold and silver was epic. So Constantine came in, won the empire, established his established his um, empire in Constantinople, controlling Rome, but not living there because, as he says, it was a cesspool. So he pulled all the power and eyes away from Latin America, concentrated it in Constantinople, um, established a whole new religion out of Jerusalem called Roman Catholicism, and then transferred the pontificate, because that is what Constantine was a pontificate, the emperor of all of Rome, Pontiff Maximus, Pontificus Maximus. And that's what Pope means. We kind of cute. Ah, Pope. Hey, Pope, 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 Pope. But he is the true emperor of Rome. So he kept Latin America a secret. And through the Jesuits and the re education of Europe, basically hid Latin America and rewrote the history of the Roman Empire, minimizing it where it had to be minimized and maximized it where it had to be maximized. Yeah, that's wild. Absolutely wild. And this is how fast it went. Okay? The Council of Nicaea was in 325. This is how fast everything moved. 325. Yep. Let it sink in. So from here, it was um, sorry guys, doing some technical stuff here in the background. Uh, so here we are at 306, and this is where Constantine is. In 20 years, he is established his seat in Constantinople, and in 4 years, no, let me get that let me get that back. In 20 years, he's already having the Council of Nicaea and establishing the pontificate and establishing the Nicene Creed and the one church. And from there, the one church literally burned through all the history that it could get its hands on of the past, technology, stories, everything. And whatever it couldn't get its hands on, it turned it into myth and paganism, which was not supported, not tolerated. And so I have memory of the Roman Catholic Church back when I was a child, 50 years ago, in the 70s, and the priest in a small Basque town was feared and respected. No, not respected, feared. And he was basically the government of the town. So everybody just did as he said, as he commanded, and it had been like that for hundreds of years. And then um, came just absolute power through the old families, shipping never changed hands. All the powers that were controlled by the Catholic Church because it had absolute dominance and became a worldwide phenomenon. Constantine and the big secret was Latin America. And so the popes throughout history have known about the Americas. And then when it came time of the discovery, the Jesuits and the um, the secret societies all joined hands and made the discovery of the New World a whole history that didn't happen to cover for the Latins living over there, and you know over time have dying out. I'm sure. I don't know. We don't know the real history, but we know that there are Roman buildings, Latin buildings throughout the Americas, Buenos Aires, uh, Guatemala, throughout Mexico, throughout the Americas. We have an Athenian temple in Tennessee, in Knoxville. We have a full-on Athenian temple, okay, that has just the shadiest of histories, but we didn't have the time, talent, or treasure in the Americas in the 1800s to construct something like that. Same goes with the nation's capital and all the state capitals, and so many amazing buildings that we have throughout the Americas. Most of them being Freemason temples, Freemason, free housing, a controlled event of bringing the illiterate Europeans into the Americas to creating population, workforce, and such, and creating that false narrative in history that we are now experiencing, which is now unraveling. So I'm not the only person onto this, but I'm pulling it together. Have published this book, Latin America. Absolutely encourage you to get a copy of it in Amazon, and it has all the details and the maps and how all of this unfolded. But yeah, from 306 being the emperor of the former Gallic Empire, not in fact merging with the Roman Empire whatsoever, but taking it over in 20 years because it got the time, talent, and treasure to do so, and blackmail and whatever they had to do to get Constantine to take power, establish it far away from the Iberian Peninsula, France, and Great Britain on the other side of Europe, making contact the with Asia and spreading as much of the tale as they could and burning as many archives as they could, uh, including Alexandria. They had to get rid of that past. So all of the libraries that were famous were burnt to cinder to get rid of the history, to do a complete amnesia. And we've had several amnesias happen in our history in the world, but this is the latest and the greatest. So that's kind of how it went down, and that's why the control exists throughout the world as it does. And currently in 2026, we see a big, big effort to break the Americas from the Jesuit European banking and monetary and financial and power holds that have been there since Rome. So, yeah, the modern world is divesting itself of their origins because, as pretty as I make it sound, these are not good people. In the end, these are just not good people in Europe. In the Americas, it was beautiful. Here, I mean, you just don't see anything um, warring. What you do see is areas outside of what they established, talking about cannibals, talking about naked people, and then you can see the maps progress where this area in the north becomes New Biscay, and then we see New France and New Anglica, and so all of the European big countries are represented throughout the Americas, people. That's why when Germany collapsed during World War II, they could come to um, uh, uh, Brazil because it's part of their ancestry. Yeah, yeah. So we had the Dark Ages, where the Jesuits, which started the fires with Ignatius. Ignatius in Latin is starting fires, and that's what the Jesuits did. And then they took manuscripts and wrote out crappy illustrated manuscripts, made them super valuable, super rare, and that was the only place of wisdom and intelligence, unless it was told to you. And then they created the universities, they created the schools. This is the Jesuit and the Roman Catholic Church. They rewrote the history of Europe, getting rid of the Gaelic Empire, propping up and dumbing down the Roman Empire, and then putting all the stories of the Romans basically uh, in play fashion, in dramatic fashion, and so yeah, yes, something quite spectacular happened, and um, and it's impressive. But again, to get back to where this kind of started, there was no way that the Spaniards could have built the city of Santiago de Compostela. First of all, Galicia was nothing back then, as or so they say. Everything was Leon and Castile. So fall of the Roman Empire. Here come the the Hun basically, the Germans, and they come in and they rule as the Visigoths and the Suevos. They rule the Iberian Peninsula for a couple hundred years. Then the locals rebel and start to form their kingdoms in the north. And after the Sueba and the Visigoths basically go back to their homelands after uh, the Genghis Khan and the Khans stop invading Europe and return to their lands, that's when the Germans could return to their lands, and that's when Spain was established as a country. So we're talking about seven, 800 AD. And right then and there, they start fighting with the Moors because the Moors, uh, under when the Germans were here, they were more worried about the north of Spain. The south of Spain was just desert, and the Germans were not interested in that. So it made it easy for the unprotected south of the Iberian Peninsula to be invaded, colonized uh, by the North Africans, which happened. And then finally they made contact, 800, 900 AD, and were at war for 500 years. So there was no time for the Spanish to build such magnificent buildings. They didn't have the talent to do so, and there's just no history of it. There's no one in Spain that can attribute their lineage to the builders of these magnificent buildings. There's no written record. There's nothing. There's just these amazing stone cities, like in Bilbao, like here in Galicia, in Barcelona, which is a very very important Latin port. You can see the old Latin there, and then the new constructions. But yeah, all of these old stone cities in throughout Europe with all these base beautiful but basic cathedrals and temples and churches. Well, those are all Latin in nature. And when they came over to Mexico, they started doing the same thing because they had the time, the talent, the treasure, but most of all, the talent, the engineering, and the builders to build the same thing that they were building. Again, this is on the Pacific side of Mexico, where these cities still exist. Everything north and east is still not conquered. So the Spanish hadn't made it over here. They didn't make it to this side for hundreds of years. Okay, so that's why the Latins were here. They set their cities of memory from Galicia, which is a very important region for them here in the north of Spain, and then Hispania. They consider themselves Hispanics and Galicians of the Iberian Peninsula. And then a little bit north, when it was time for the Bay of Biscay and the Basques to create their new Nova Biscaya, then they settled in the north here. But this was the start of the colonization by the Latins in the Americas. And I still have not had anybody tell me, uh, after reviewing the material, that I'm wrong. So it is a shocking concept, something that I have borne out and have done the research and have written the book on it, uh, which is available on Amazon, by the way. And once anybody and everybody that does the research with me or independently, they see the same thing. And it scares the heck out of academics, which to me is just fantastic. So they can't rebut it, but it scares them because they know what it says. And this totally rewrites history in a big way. All right, so Constantine was in on it, was being funded and financed by this because he was part of the plan, and he had to create control. Did so by the Roman Catholic Church, and then through the Jesuit order, burned history and rewrote it through establishing the universities. The great American universities started in Great Britain, Oxford, and such. And all that was a way to rewrite history, rewrite history. And once you got that PhD and were brainwashed, then you can go out and teach the new history. And then all the smaller schools, private schools, they weren't private schools per se. They were monasteries. So you either were, if you were a woman of means, you would go stay with nuns, live with them, and be indoctrinated by them, and the men would go to the monks. And that happened here in the north of Spain a lot. Anybody with money would send their children to be educated at these monasteries, and they were systematically just indoctrinated, brainwashed in every way possible. I know people that went to these schools. My mom was one. My ex-girlfriend went to one, and her ex-boyfriend, which we talk about a lot, went to one as well, and it was traumatic. It was traumatic. But you came out how they wanted you to be once you graduated and got your degrees from these monasteries, and then you went. You were the teachers. You were the important people in the towns, and the monks had control of you the whole time. So even today, even though those monasteries no longer exist, the men that went to those monasteries still get together for reunions every year. Of course, all the old monks are gone, but they were all celebrated throughout time, and they're old men now. So that medium of control is gone, and that's why we're seeing the changes in society that we're seeing, and that's why we're seeing the moves that we're seeing from the Trump administration and the downfall of Europe. And uh, as one YouTuber, commentator, analyst uh, has observed, is Europe is being sold off and basically abandoned by this old money, and they're trying to find new places to go, and it's harder and harder for them. So the new money has taken over, and it's hard for that old money to move around. It used to through the British system, but now it's harder and harder. All right, so everything is connected from the Romans, and this commentator also had made that observation that much of the financial system goes back to the Romans, goes back to the Ottoman Empire. So there is so much, and also goes to the reason why China and Russia have been struggling with the global empire, because the old Roman Empire has made sure that they would never have access to the global financial systems. So the British aren't just British; the British are Roman, and the Americas have never just been Latin America. They have been supporting the Roman project for well over 2,000 years. Yeah, it's quite a process and quite a thing to see and feel. All right, so um, if you want to rewind and watch the full episode as you're looking at it right now and seeing what the heck is this guy saying, well, I recommend you do so. This has all, like I said, been very well researched, very well documented, and very well um, rendered in a wonderful book, Latin America, over 200, almost 300 pages. Beautiful. It is 8.5 by 11. The maps are fully visible. The story is fully told, and this is where we are now. So our history goes back that far here in the current West and in the East and globally. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time here in the Breadcrumbs Project. I start transmitting every weekday at 5 o'clock unless something comes up. So yeah, 5 o'clock Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock Eastern time in America, 5 o'clock Eastern time to sync your clocks. All right, thank you all for watching. Like the video, share the channel. Let us rebuild our base. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel and get your friends to do so. All right, this is the Breadcrumbs Project. I am Euripides Crumb, signing off.